Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside the Force. Dave Cottingham here with Hannah Burr. Hannah, it is the last day of August.
It is.
It's pretty crazy how fast this year's gone.
It's insane. It feels like it feels like it's been going at light speed.
It is very good. Light speed. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, and how are you doing?
Doing good. We are here talking about Ahsoka as Ahsoka continues to air on Disney Plus Tuesday nights. And I will say that we've for those of you that aren't patrons, we've been posting on Patreon our quick reaction videos. I've been doing those pretty much after every episode that's been airing on these series, but Hannah's been joining me for these Ahsoka ones, which have been good because usually they're only about 5 minutes or so, but we actually get a little bit more discussion going because we're doing them right after, and we haven't really talked about it at all until we start recording.
It's literally hop on. Okay, you ready? Yep. You ready? Yep. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yes, and it's been awesome because I think it's fresh and I haven't, to be honest, it's Thursday night now. I haven't watched it again yet.
Oh.
Have you?
Yes, I watched it again tonight.
Okay, so that's good. But I've soaked in enough to where I think I could talk about it still some more, but I definitely will watch it more this weekend. I did want to bring up this because I was ill prepared and I just started thinking about this. But like I said, we were putting those reaction videos up on our Patreon, and of course, thank you so much to our patrons who support us through there. We're doing everything we can to put some stuff up there for you all, and these reaction videos are only on Patreon. We're not putting them up anywhere else. So our other master patron, Huang, actually said right after we posted it, thanks for being so quick. I needed someone to tell me how to feel. Always appreciate y'all. So,
Aww.
There you go. So thanks. Watching that, of course, Thrawn Addict's on there, one of our other master patrons. We'll get to his comment later in the show. But so if you're interested in getting some extra video content from us, go check out our tiers, patreon.com/InsideTheForce. Thanks for joining us on that. Okay, so they're not calling these chapters. They're calling them parts. Part 3, Time to Fly, is this episode. Somewhat short, only about 32 minutes. Mm-hmm. About 36 minutes, I think, with credits. Overall, Hannah, I'll let you go first. What did you think about this episode?
I think there were some pretty cool moments. I think there were some pretty cool moments, but I still need another episode to figure out my overall feeling on the series. And I think I watched it with my husband tonight, and I think he put it best when he said, I'm waiting to be bedazzled. I'm waiting.
Bedazzled.
I'm waiting for that hook. I'm waiting for that moment, because right now it doesn't necessarily feel like something's at stake. It feels very much like the prequels feel, but when you first watch them. Mm-hmm. It seems mellow almost. I don't like to use it, but so I think something's simmering. We both know something's simmering, which is why I feel like we need one more episode. But I'm waiting for that hook. I'm waiting for that, yes, here we go type of moment that I feel like we got in The Mandalorian season 1 when we had that twist at the end of episode 1. That was a, oh yes, here we go moment. In Andor, I feel like we got the, oh yes, here we go moment in episode 2.
Yeah.
So I'm just waiting for that here we go moment. I can talk about the little bits and pieces that stood out to me that I thought were really cool. There was one Zach pointed out tonight that I didn't realize when I saw it the first time. But your reaction to this episode.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was, I think that the point of this episode, and I said it right away to my daughter, Sam, who was sitting there. I said that this episode, I feel like, is going to be very important later on.
Yes.
I think there's a lot going on there that Filoni's laying the groundwork for. And to me, make no mistake about it, I think it's all about Sabine. I think that we're hitting this area, which I want to get into in a little bit here. We're hitting this area about force sensitivity and force users. And a lot of that was the focus of this, the first part of it, even the latter part of it. I think even when she's sitting there in the gunner seat, there's aspects of the force for that she doesn't tap into or can't or whatever, doesn't know how to. We'll talk about it. But I think this was a very interesting episode because, Sabine and Ahsoka and this master and apprentice relationship that we got reintroduced to in the first couple episodes, and now it's kind of carrying on, and really we're seeing what it probably was like before, right? That we didn't see before. So overall, I felt like I don't feel like at first it was as strong as the first couple episodes, but I feel like it's going to be a lot more important later on when we see 6, 7, and 8, So that's where I feel about it right now. I don't think it was, and it wasn't, like we'll talk about several moments that kind of popped up that were neat and cool and good to experience, but there wasn't anything, like you said, that wowed you and made you kind of, jump out of your seat, kind of, like you said. So, I do think that's probably coming next episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a setup for some crazy stuff going on in this next episode. So,
and it's an excellent point with you saying that you think this episode is laying the groundwork for a lot of what's coming ahead, and I think I completely agree with you. There are sometimes episodes in TV shows where they have to lay the groundwork, they have to set something up, and it's not the most exciting thing in the world.
Right.
But I think the one telltale sign that this is meant to be a setup episode was that kind of throwaway line about the space whales saying, "Oh, well, space whales hang around light speed channels that can go to other galaxies." It's like, yes. Okay, that's what this episode is for. Which and when I say it's felt mellow this whole time, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it's the anticipation building of when are we going to get that hook? When are we going to get that, okay, here we go moment? So
yeah, and the latter half of the episode was really all action. Mm-hmm. There wasn't really advancements. Once they got to the ring, it was like they were under attack, and Ahsoka's outside of the ship defending with her lightsabers, and then they're landing and hiding. Yeah, so it was a super kind of jump to the end once they got into the action, and so yeah, there wasn't a lot. Like you said, there was a lot of setup in the beginning, but nothing too. Again, the reveal to them was the ring. We already knew about the ring,
right?
So you're not really surprised by that. We got surprised by that already the first episode or two, right? So, but okay, I'll bring up one thing first, and then you can. So I thought one thing was interesting, was really cool to see, because honestly, I wish we would have saw this. Something in this version, I guess, maybe in the prequels, but what looks to be a lot of the way Jedi trained in their sword fighting, and Hu Yang really working with Sabine and I thought that was really neat to see. I thought seeing the different styles and the different techniques. And I think, you know, people kind of put that stuff together throughout, you know, the dictionaries and encyclopedias and researching the Jedi forms and things like that. But to actually see it and see it getting worked on, I just thought that was really neat.
That was absolutely fantastic. And I also just love the fact that it's David Tennant.
Yeah.
As Hu Yang. Like, but that is one of the very cool moments. And that it was just like, here you go, fans. Here you go.
Totally.
Here are the fighting styles.
Well, and of course, yeah. And then, of course, shifting into, you know, the Luke aspect where, you know, hiding her eyes and, yeah, but we'll get into that. Well, so what's the thing you wanted to bring up?
Oh, there are a couple. And by a couple, I mean a few.
Yeah, sure.
So that was one of them, was the whole Jedi training bit. The other one was, so we see Hera's son, and his name is Jacen.
Jacen Syndulla, yeah.
Spelled Jacen.
That's right.
I think that's a tip of the hat to the EU, Han and Leia's son, Jacen.
Yes, probably was. Yes.
So I just want to give that a little shout out because we kind of flipped out over that. Space whales, who doesn't want to see space whales?
Yes.
Ahsoka fighting outside of the ship, I think, was a really cool callback to Clone Wars when they did that. Although, if I remember correctly, in Clone Wars, did they have to wear space gear?
They did. Well, I don't. Which I'm trying to think of, because I remember them doing it in Rebels.
Maybe I'm thinking of Rebels instead of Clone Wars.
You might be thinking of Rebels, yeah, and they had suits on.
They did, okay. So, but that was a really cool callback.
I think so too. Yep.
I think
it was season 3. I think it was season 3 because I remember Kanan and Ezra both were out there with their sabers, or maybe it was season 4 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened at some point, which you know that was a nice callback. The other thing that was pointed out was with the big ring, and when Hu Yang was, you know, giving a spiel of this is like a hyper ring, da 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 da. He was like, "Oh, great! Well, would you look at that? A bunch of people going to stop the bad guys because they found a construct they made that wasn't fully done yet. So now they get to destroy it before it's done." And I'm like, this time I don't think they're going to do that. This time I think they're. Because we got to see Thrawn. How else is Thrawn going to come through? So we know they're not going to be successful in destroying this. But it's kind of interesting to see that's like a repetitive pattern we see throughout Star Wars. It's not.
Yeah, that's true.
Not a bad thing. It's just. So those were. I think those were all the little nitpick things that were like, oh, cool. Oh, also the thing, you pointed this out in our immediate, after we did our immediate review, is that if you look at the credits, Marrok has a voice, has a name.
He does. I guess it's he. I don't know.
Here's the thing. I feel like that brings us back to it being Barriss. How else would you throw a whole audience off unless you give it a voice that doesn't sound remotely anything like her? So.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like, obviously, it sounds like a muffled voice through a mask. That doesn't determine whether or not it's a male or female. I mean, there's a male person that is credited as the voice. But again, yeah, that just kind of throws you off because, you know, James Earl Jones wasn't in The Mask. Yeah, and I know he was a man, and then Vader, oh my God. But David Prowse was a man, obviously. But, you know, I think Marrok still definitely could be Barriss. I totally don't think that. Now, I will say I read some articles that, and I do not believe this at all.
Uh-oh.
But they're saying that the scene where they see the Purgles, that Marrok actually kind of turns and looks at them and almost like recognizes them in a sense. So everybody's obviously thinking that it's Ezra again. But I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying that it's Ezra.
It could just be Merrick going, what the heck is that?
Totally. Yes.
We don't see their face. We don't know. We don't know if it's a oh or if it's a oh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm just not. I just can't imagine it being Ezra. I just cannot imagine it being Ezra.
You unintentionally made a point in our last episode, which made me think, oh, crap, it's Ezra.
I know. and I don't. What was that? I don't remember. What was that point?
It was Ahsoka would have felt guilty because
Yes.
Ezra saved her.
From the World Between Worlds.
Yeah.
That's right.
And,
Yes.
if there's one thing Ahsoka wrestles with, it's regret. We've seen that with Anakin. We've seen it in Rebels. So
I just think it's one of them things where, honestly, to me, it's very similar to Kylo Ren. I thought it was a mistake. This is one of the many mistakes I feel like that they made in the sequel trilogy. I thought it was a mistake that we didn't see his turn. Like truly see his turn. We saw a flashback of it with Luke, but he was already gone. Luke, when Luke read his mind, he was already gone. So I felt like I feel like episode 7 should have been more about his turn, and we would have learned about his turn more. We saw in a comic that comic was it. That was awesome to see that, right? Amazing. So if this is Ezra, we're again in that same boat. What happened? How did he get to that point?
Who knows? Maybe
are we going to totally miss that whole? Surely they're not going to devote a whole episode to a flashback of that, right? I mean, that would kind of kill the momentum, I feel like.
What they may do is they may announce as soon as, like, if that's revealed, they might announce an Ezra series.
Could be.
Mini series. Just dedicated to his turn. So
are you on the boat now that it's Ezra?
You put me on the boat last week that it was Ezra, but now I'm like, maybe it's back to Barriss. I don't know. I'm on the boat of please make it a character that's already been established. That's the boat I'm on. I just don't want it to be a new character.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I'm on that boat.
But those two, to me, those two are the only ones it could be. It has to be either Ezra or Barriss if it is an old character.
Well, it might be Cal.
Cal Kestis. I mean, that's hard. I don't think it would matter to them, though. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it wouldn't, but it still shows a Jedi turning to the dark side.
Yeah, but then we're in that boat again. That what happened to Cal this whole time? Why would
Then
Cal and Ezra would be a little harder for. Well, you're right. I mean, Cal did touch the dark side a little bit.
Yeah, Cal would be easier to avoid a whole series for.
Yeah, but Barriss makes sense because she's already evil. So anyway, I don't know, but but I'm with you. Just because the voice was credited to a Paul, I don't believe that Paul is the one that's in the mask. So, but I could be wrong. I totally could be wrong.
We could be.
Yeah. But you're right. I think there's still something there. Hopefully indeed. And then what about, yeah, go ahead.
Well, as I was just about to say, we got to talk about Mon Mothma.
Of course. Mon Mothma.
That was great.
Love Mon Mothma. Love seeing her. It's funny because I just on TV right now on TBS or TNT or something, Rogue One is actually playing, and I was doing the notes here. I was watching it, and it's a scene where Jyn comes back and is trying to get everybody to fight, and she's sitting there. Now she does in that episode, like in Rogue One. And again, I'm not this is just me being picky, but I'm not. It doesn't bother me that much. But in Rogue One, she definitely looks like, and I can't remember her name, the woman that played Mon Mothma in Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Like the same hairstyle. I mean, kind of looked a little older. You know, she looked the part. Now, of course, you go back a little bit to Andor, which takes place, you know, about 5 years before that. She looks a little younger, not younger, but a little more vibrant. You know, her hair's a little brighter. And I feel like in this, even though we saw her in a hologram, she looked more like the Andor Mon Mothma than she did the actual Rogue One, which this is after that. So I get it. Maybe she got back to being glamorous. That's kind of what, you know, she's back. She's the Chancellor. So she's obviously she's not in hiding anymore. So I get it. But she does look more like the Andor Mothma than the one we see in the original trilogy, the Rogue One era.
Yeah, that doesn't bother, and it makes sense because now she's back in the public. But here's the other thing too: have you seen pictures of presidents when they first swear in to when they leave the office?
Yeah, they age like 20 years.
So she probably aged being in hiding, being under all that stress. And then she also doesn't really put forth a lot of care in her look because, you know, she's in the middle of the fight. And then now when she's back in front of the public, she puts on makeup. She takes more care of her hair, maybe dyes it, does whatever. So, yeah, that doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, in fact, I think I feel like in Rebels, in Rogue One, and then Return of the Jedi, I believe she's wearing the same outfit.
Oh, that's her signature look. Like, girl, if it works for you and it looks great on you and you are comfy in it, then you rock that look.
Yes. No, she was fantastic. And, you know, and that part was interesting because, you know, she's talking to Hera, who is a general, and she's trying to really let the Senate know that there is an issue coming, right? There is a problem, Thrawn's on the horizon, things like that. You know, it's fun. I don't know if you got this sense, but the fact that Hera was explaining to them that there were Imperial loyalists still all throughout the rebellion, all throughout the Republic. I don't know if you got the sense, but I got the sense that some of these senators standing next to her are actually Imperial loyalists also.
I wouldn't suspect anything less.
Yeah.
Because how else would the First Order survive the way it did? How else would these loyalists get the funding that they need? It's people in power. So, of course, there's going to be some loyalists still in the council and still in the Senate. So, that doesn't surprise me. So I just wonder how it's going to play out. I wonder if we're actually going to see it in action or if that's just something that we get through the grapevine or have to speculate.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you picked up on this. And I think we mentioned this when the trailer came out because we saw this in the trailer, this hologram. But the person to the left of her that was, you know, kind of opposing that, his name is Hamato Ziono. And that is the father of Kaz Ziono from Star Wars Resistance, that animated series that takes place between episodes 7 and 8.
Oh, dang.
So he's Kaz's father. Kazuda, I think is his name, but they call him Kaz. And I think I'm saying his last name right, Ziono or something like that. But I haven't seen Resistance in a long time, years since they came out. And it was okay. It wasn't, in fact, I'm not even sure if I ever fully finished the series, but anyway, that's Kaz's father.
Oh.
Being a senator there. So I would think he's not an Imperial loyalist.
Probably not. Maybe he's just one of these people who has wishful thinking, who wants to believe, if I don't think about it, it doesn't exist.
Right. But it's, it's one of the things, and it's funny because I was talking to Corey about this today, actually. It seems like this repetitive cycle of, the Republic gets overthrown and the Empire takes over. Well, within the Empire, you had a rebellion going on. You had all these people that were fighting against. Well, then now the rebellion is won, and now they're in charge, and now you have all these imperialists that are basically rebelling against it's like this never-ending cycle that I guess ended in episode 9 fully, maybe? I don't know.
I don't think it'll ever end. I think it's just going to be that never-ending cycle that happens.
Yeah, well, I guess it's one of them things where, it's a little different, though, because the Empire was truly what basically everybody wanted. It wasn't like they took over and they're making people do things. Like everybody thought the Jedi were traitors. The Republic had a bunch of corrupted politicians, and the Emperor was the only way to keep everybody safe. And so everybody voted. I mean, Padme said it. This is how democracy dies. I mean, everybody voted that the Empire is what the answer was. So,
and the thing is, people are like, oh, well, they're stupid. They didn't think it through. No, if you only heard the one side of the story, if you saw everything from the one point of view, as we do in Rise of the Red Blade, of course you would believe that the Jedi were corrupt. Mm-hmm. As far as you know, they went in and they tried to kill a senator.
That's right.
The Chancellor, as far as you know, that's what happened. Because there were no other witnesses. Exactly. It's his word. And look what they did to him. They disfigured him.
Yes.
Of course they're traitors. So, it makes perfect sense. I mean, when we watch the movies, we think, oh, they're a bunch of idiots. But if you really do look at it from the other side, I mean, who's not to say we would have done the same thing?
Exactly. And I think that's one thing the Bad Batch did a good job of reminding us also. You had people that were on the streets that now can be part of the Imperial Navy or be stormtroopers, get a paycheck, get a house, a roof over their head, food on their table. It's like the Empire provided for people, even though they were killing people, but they were providing for people, and people began to really believe in it. So it's a pretty cool. And so now, you have. That's really what's interesting, and honestly, I would really like to see. I think I've said it 100 times, a Mothma series post Return of the Jedi, because not only, or maybe just a book, I don't know, but something to really dive into the average person that is now seeing this, because you remember we talked about this. A lot of people saw the rebellion as terrorists.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. Now these terrorists have taken over the galaxy. How am I okay with that? And okay, but then you should start seeing, okay, well, now we have a chancellor now again, and now they're bringing the Senate back. So now my world has representation again. So that's cool, I guess. So then maybe, I don't know. That's one thing I'm kind of curious about is how do citizens view the transition from the Empire back to a republic, and are they learning what truly happened these past 19 years or 24 years basically? What do they know, right? What's like you just said, they were told before the Jedi were evil and they try to take, what are these people told now? Is Mothma out there screaming at the top of her lungs like, you are free now. This is what happened. This is why we did what we did, kind of, because it seems like now, especially in this world with Ahsoka, and we see a little bit with the Mandalorian, it's like, it's still getting kind of figured out. And the biggest mistake, as we're seeing, is they let these Empire, they let the fleet, and they let them go. They didn't capture them all and destroy all the stars. They let them leave. We learned that in the Aftermath books. So that was obviously a major mistake. But anyway, kind of went on a tangent there. But that's the stuff that's really interests me around this time period about Mothma and the role of the Senate and then establishing a new republic. I think that's pretty neat.
Oh, it is. And especially, it goes back to the whole thing of everybody's been told the Jedi are bad people. The Jedi have betrayed. All of a sudden you have Luke, who's a Jedi, come in and save the day.
True.
It makes sense for the rebels to embrace him. But then all of a sudden he's allowed to start his own Jedi Academy. He's allowed to train all these new Padawans. What caused that change? And have there been assassin attempts on Jedi in this time?
But does even anybody know about that though? Because he is kind of isolated. He's not doing it on Coruscant like they used to.
It's not a secret either.
Well, I don't know. Who would know? Who would care? If he's the only one, and he's not even really talking to Leia. I don't know if any, because for about 5 years or so, all he did, at least what we know, all he did was travel around and try to look for artifacts and old Jedi.
In Shadow of the Sith, it's pretty clear that people know of Luke and know that he's a Jedi.
Yes, but that is a little bit down the road, right?
So maybe he had to wait for the propaganda to get out there that the Jedi are actually good.
Because it was Shadow of the Sith. I remember. Did he have his school yet?
He did.
Right.
Because
okay.
Ben was.
Oh yeah, Ben was there. Right?
Yeah, Ben was there, and he was a student.
Yes.
And there were other students out there, and he's like, "Oh, you gotta watch the younglings," and he's like, "Oh."
And I think I think it said that Ben was like 15 or so.
Yeah, he was a teenager, I think.
13, 14 maybe, or something like that when he...
I'm really tempted
to... Okay, so this is... Yeah, so this is... I mean, we're getting there. I mean, this is... Which is strange, because I believe Shadow of the Sith, in the cover anyway, Luke looks a lot older.
He does. It kind of throws it throws everything off a little bit, but once again, when someone's under stress, I mean...
That's true. Yeah. That's interesting. I got to look that up when that takes place, because it would be... I mean, because technically if we're 9, 10 years away from the... wait, are we 9? No, we're 9 years from A New Hope, right? Yes. So we're only 5 or 6 or so years from Return of the Jedi. Okay, so we still have about 7, 8 more years until Ben actually goes to Luke. So, but he is just now starting his school, so who knows when he gets his first batch of kids, right? It seems like a couple of them have been there longer when Ben finally shows up. So anyway, there's a mess of a timeline there, but in fact, I have my timeline book somewhere. I should probably look that up. But it's not as detailed, because there's not a lot of stories, right? There's the shows, but then there's only Shadow of the Sith. There's the Kylo Ren comic. Mm-hmm. That's the only really things that happened during that time period when he's training. We don't know much about that yet.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. So, no, you're right. I think, there's it's interesting to know what people, if anything, how much they know about the Jedi at this point. They know the truth now about the Jedi. But it doesn't seem like, to me in a way, that the New Republic at any point in this time period, even by the time we get to the sequel trilogy, it doesn't seem like there's any point where they want the Jedi to be back as a full established Guardians of the Peace, right? Which is the one big thing that disappointed me going into the sequel trilogy. I was hoping for an established Jedi Order with Luke as the master, but we never got that. It doesn't seem like Mothma or even Leia was really pushing for that to happen, which now it may happen with Rey now, it seems like.
It may, but that could also just be because they were like, look, we need to warm people up to the Jedi again. Immediately jumping into a Jedi Order could freak people out.
Yeah, it could.
Because it's still, like, if you still think about timeline, that's still relatively fresh for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Like what? That's like 20 years? Not even?
Not even.
Not even? I would argue that for a lot of us, 9/11 is still very fresh in our minds.
Yeah. Well, definitely the ones that lived through it, for sure.
And that was over 20 years ago. So if you kind of, you know, because that could have been seen as a terroristic attack. So, yeah,
good
that
point.
doesn't surprise me that they said, hey, we're going to hold off on a Jedi Order because it's still kind of fresh in people's minds. And, you know.
Yeah, good stuff there. Let's talk one last thing about this episode, at least for me in a way, is about Sabine and kind of the her lack or her her attempts at connecting with the Force. So what I've been reading a lot online is obviously a lot of people questioning how she could be Force sensitive, or how can somebody learn the Force? Not everybody, can everybody do it? Cannot everybody do it? And I just want to say I believe, and I've been, there's been people posting these a lot of interviews and stuff with George Lucas over the years, and one major one that I think was that he did shortly after the prequels came out. And he basically was saying that, look, just like he said in the original trilogy, the Force is everywhere. The Force is in all living things. So everybody, and it's not something you have, but everybody has the Force flowing through them. It's just whether or not you can focus and train yourself enough to be able to use it, basically, right? And people may not agree with this either, but he tried to explain how people can tap into it and hear it more, and that's where the midi-chlorians come from, right? The more midi-chlorians you have, because the midi-chlorians reside in all living cells, and as Qui-Gon said it, they speak to you. They tell you the will of the Force. So you're able to connect through them based on how many you have, right? Because everybody has different levels. Yoda had a lot. Anakin had the most. So Sabine, you can kind of maybe make the argument Sabine doesn't have as many, maybe. But also, he also, in a different interview, George explained, you got to think of it like maybe something like yoga. Everybody can do yoga, but unless you're really focused, unless you do it all the time, not everybody is really as good at it, right? So, and then actually we were talking about the Kylo Ren comic. If you remember, Luke in that was talking to one of his students. He was saying, think of the Force as a doorway. And for some, the door is just cracked. And what you have to do is you have to figure out how to open it and let the Force flow. So the more it flows and the more you can feel it, the more you can utilize it. So I guess what's interesting to think of, Hannah, is do you think Sabine will get there? Do you think we'll actually see her use the Force?
Absolutely. I definitely think we will get there. I just don't think it's going to be until later. It reminds me very much of The Legend of Korra season 1. It's a Legend of Korra is what is the next Avatar after Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. And sorry for any spoilers here, but if you haven't seen it by now, oh well. She, in the very beginning, first half of episode 1, she's already mastered earthbending, firebending, waterbending, but she cannot do airbending. She can't do it. She doesn't know why she doesn't connect to it. Like, she just doesn't understand it. And then finally, at the end of the season, something just clicks for her. It was like one specific circumstance that just opened the floodgates, and suddenly she could all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, she was a master of airbending. So I think that's what's going to happen with Sabine. There's going to be a specific moment. There's going to be a specific trigger. And it's all just going to come flooding through. And the other reason why I say that is in the book, Rise of the Red Blade, that happens with Iskat, the main character. We hear that she actually has a very powerful connection with the Force, but it's rooted in emotion, which of course the Jedi were strongly against. So they were telling her, like, repeat the Jedi code. It'll help you remain calm your emotions, control your emotions. That's how you're going to be able to master the Force. And so she kind of has this weak relationship with the Force. And then there's a moment where it's a life or death situation and she lets go and the Force just flows through her like none other.
Nice.
So I think, because we've seen it before in Star Wars, we've seen someone who has a weak connection with the Force and then something clicks for them and all of a sudden everything just goes. That I think we will get there with Sabine, but it's going to be a very specific moment where all of a sudden everything clicks for her and she becomes a weapon. And a master of not a master of the Force, but somebody who all of a sudden, all of their training leading up to this with no progression, all of a sudden just makes sense. And so I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's, I think, when we look at other people like this, like Luke, Luke, up until A New Hope, never knew about the Force. He was first told about it when he's standing there in Ben's hut, Obi-Wan's hut, and learning about the saber and what happened to his father and what the Force. And it's like he had no idea. And then all of a sudden, he's on the Falcon and he's able to see the probe and deflect. It's like, now, of course, he's the son of Anakin Skywalker, so it can come a lot more natural, but so it doesn't work. Obviously, it doesn't work the same way for everybody. She doesn't obviously come from anybody that's a Jedi or was trained as a Jedi. She's a Mandalorian, so it is going to be hard. And I'm curious. It's one of the things where I'm curious how long Ahsoka had tried to train her, but maybe just couldn't get into it. But that gets into another conversation we'll have in a second with Ahsoka. But I do think that she'll get it. Like you said, I think there's going to be something that triggers her. It might be another lightsaber battle when she fights. I feel like she's going to fight Shin again. Mm-hmm. So I think that could be, because there is a scene in the trailer, I think, where Shin's like, "You have no power." I think that might be even coming up in this next episode. So it might be something. And you think about the other example I was saying, you think about Rey. Rey didn't use the Force really until episode 7, right? She was 19, 20 at that point too. And it wasn't until she, summoned Luke's lightsaber to her that she was like, okay, I have power. I know. But it wasn't until she, Kylo's like striking down on her and she taps into the Force right then to really just, like you said, kind of open the doorway and let that in. So yeah, so I think that is a moment that Sabine is going to have.
Now, to be fair, Rey is the granddaughter of Palpatine.
That's right. See, I know. So we're talking about two people that have their destinies are basically to be Force sensitive and be Jedis and whatnot. So Sabine is harder, and that's why I think this is different, right? We haven't seen this before. We haven't seen somebody that is not really Force sensitive and is struggling to tap into the Force. And I think Ahsoka hinted at this a little bit, but you can't. Her frustrations probably prevent it a little bit. Her anger are preventing it a little bit, right? So she's got to be focused. She's got to be, in the moment. And so, but I do think she'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, kind of talking a little bit more into Ahsoka a little bit as we finish up August. This is Ahsoka month. We're talking a little bit more deeper about Ahsoka. I did want to talk about that too a little bit to extend on that, because she did decide to take on an apprentice. She decided to train somebody in the ways of the Force, especially knowing that it's not like she found somebody that she could feel was strong in the Force, right? She decided to train Sabine. So, and this is somebody that walked away from the Jedi, didn't ever finish, like she even says, didn't finish her training, went through this entire time during the Civil War as this fulcrum character, kind of recruiting rebels and helping the rebellion on the back end. Obviously, never getting to the forefront, coming forward to fight the Empire that we know about. Really, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, why do you think she thought about even taking an apprentice?
Oh, I think she shared that within the first 2 episodes when she said there are so few of us. It could be that.
Do you think she was thinking of reestablishing the Jedi Order?
I think she and Luke had a conversation. I think because, in Book of Boba Fett, we see Luke try to train Grogu. So Luke and Ahsoka could have had a conversation. And Ahsoka's like, okay, well, maybe I should get back into this. But here's the other thing, too. In Rise of the Red Blade, and then I think there's some other literature where they explain this, the way that a master chooses a Padawan is they feel a connection in the Force. They feel like there is a bond between them, and that's why they choose a Padawan. It has to do with something with that. So it could be that Ahsoka felt that bond with Sabine and was just following the will of the Force.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that could be it too. It could be out of necessity for the fact that there are so few Jedi. It could be that she felt like there was a bond in the Force between them as Master and Padawan. I can't really think of another reason.
Yeah, because I wonder again. I have just so many questions and thoughts of where Ahsoka is and what she is doing during the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's obviously not with the rebels. And, they did a good job. Filoni did a good job, obviously, of explaining why the Ghost Crew is not with the rebellion, even though we know Hera did. Hera did fight the Battle of Yavin. I don't think she was at the Battle of Yavin, but she was at the Battle of Endor and some other battles throughout the original trilogy. Zeb obviously was there. Chopper was there. But, we know Sabine hung back and Rex hung back, I believe, too, on Lothal to defend if the Empire came back. Kanan obviously passed away. Ezra's gone. But, Ahsoka, after she got saved from Ezra in the World Between Worlds, we don't know what she did up until at this point. So I wonder what made her still. Obviously, I feel like she may have felt like she has a second chance now because Ezra saved her. So maybe it's possible her mindset has changed now that, I need to continue helping people as the Jedi did, even though I'm not necessarily a Jedi or, but everybody keeps calling her a Jedi still, I mean,
well, what else do you call somebody with a lightsaber?
Exactly. Even Balin calling her a Jedi and calling Sabine her apprentice and things like that. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, I think everybody but herself calls herself, refers to herself as a Jedi. But I'm so interested in learning that time period between there. I feel like it just makes sense that you give her a comic series to fill in these gaps, like you did with the Star Wars series. In between the movies, you got to just do a comic series and let's follow Ahsoka throughout her time. But then, I want to know. I want to know those early conversations with Luke on establishing a new order, because maybe that's what she helped Luke do. Give him advice of what she went through as a Padawan. And she was a youngling. She was a Padawan. She trained with Yoda, trained with Anakin. Luke obviously has no experience with that. He trained with Yoda, but that was it. So I'd love to know those conversations and why, or if she was going to hang out there and be part of that school and be part of that training the next generation, even though she didn't want to train Grogu, but it seemed like there was some understanding there that Luke and Ahsoka kind of knew each other a little longer, and and she knew he was going to be building this, and I think she supported that, and I think she wanted to be. So I feel like she kind of worked her way back into being a Jedi, and maybe that was because of the World Between Worlds, of having that second chance at life again.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Because I feel like there's a turn. I feel like from what we saw when she left the Order, and even when we saw in her Rebels, and even though, like you said, she has lightsabers and she fights like a Jedi, and I just think there's something different now in this series where she truly feels like a Jedi.
Yes.
Like walks around, talks like a Jedi. I mean, she's Hugh Yang's her droid, the ultimate droid from 1,000 years ago when the Jedi were. It's like you are a Jedi in this series. So I'm hoping that mindset has come back, and maybe I was just trying to kind of figure out when that happened. And being saved is usually what turns people.
If this is the series where she dies, I really hope her last line in this series or season is someone going, "Who are you?" And she goes, "I'm a Jedi."
Ah, see? Yeah.
That would be very cool, because
that would be cool.
If that's a line we get at some point where "Who are you?" "I'm a Jedi."
Jedi. I would love to hear that. That's a good point. And then my daughter Sam tonight, when she was rewatching the first episode, she turned to me and said, "Is Ahsoka alive in episode 7, 8, and 9? And I was like, "I don't know, babe." We hear her voice, or we hear Ashley's voice. Rosario wasn't cast yet. We hear Ashley's voice, and everybody else that was heard is dead. So it kind of hinted at the fact that she wasn't alive then. What? Who knows? She very well could be.
I don't know. I feel like there's she's like, what? 20 years older than Luke?
She is, yeah. At this point in time, I believe she's probably like my age. She's like in her mid 40s.
Yeah, but I'm saying, okay, so she's in her mid. I don't know. Maybe that species of alien doesn't live that long, or maybe she dies when she destroys Thrawn.
We very well could see the end of Ahsoka. I hope not, but again, it's one of them things. Yes, she'd be like probably in her 60s or so by the time the sequel trilogy comes out.
And it could be her species, their lifespan is 60 years.
That's right. She could be like really old, and that's, like you said, that species, and maybe she can't fight at that point in a way. That's why she's kind of just retired somewhere on a beach.
I will say this, though. Something that's very consistent in the Jedi is like age is truly a number. It doesn't matter how old you are. You still are amazing at fighting. That's the thing.
That's true.
That's the thing.
That's true.
So, and Jedi...
Yoda, Joe Castanew. Yeah.
And I feel like Jedi tend to live longer anyway. So... I don't know.
Probably. Yeah.
So, but I think the fact that we hear her voice means that she has passed. So the question is,
I think so.
When?
Yeah.
And how?
I think so. I think you're right. Yeah, but either way, that's Ahsoka, and she's had amazing stories up so far in these past 15 years, and this series is really obviously contributing to that, and it seems like it's a very popular series, though. The premiere got the most views that any Star Wars series has gotten. I don't see a lot of people bashing it, like sometimes people do with these other series.
I think the biggest complaint I've seen is that people... Like it's actually the comment I made last week where I was like, I don't feel like she's playing Ahsoka the way I would envision it. But meanwhile, when I come at it from the point of view of like, but that's not a negative comment. That's just me putting my perception on it. Some people are really bashing Rosario for it. And other people are saying, oh, this is really Rebel Season 6. We've been duped. And I'm like, you've seen the trailer. This is Rebel.
Yes, exactly.
Come on. That's dumb. But I agree with you. I don't see a lot of negative comments regarding Ahsoka in general.
No, I think once Thrawn comes, hopefully people aren't upset by the way you can't be upset by the way he sounds, because it's the same guy that voiced him in Rebels. So.
I swear, if people make complaints on that, I'll just be like, okay, well, you're not even worth the time to debate this with.
Just don't watch. Just don't watch. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so anything else on Ahsoka or?
I don't think so.
Show. Yeah, so we'll be back for next week. Here's a quick rundown of some upcoming releases. This past week, actually, we got on your bookshelves now, From a Certain Point of View, The Return of the Jedi 40th Anniversary, where you have 40 stories there. Same thing they did for A New Hope and Empire. In September 5th, coming up next week, you got the High Republic Tales of Light and Life. They're short stories based around during the Phase 1 era. You got Crimson Climb, October 10th. Eye of Darkness, which kicks off Phase 3 of the High Republic, November 14th. December 5th, Tales of Enlightenment, which are the short stories from Phase 2. And then Defy the Storm, March 12th still. That's what's ending the High Republic series. Comics, yesterday you got Bounty Hunters 37, Mandalorian Season 2, number 3. Next week, Star Wars 38, Dark Droids number 2. September 13th, Darth Vader 38, Obi-Wan Kenobi number 1, which is the series. They're putting it in comic form.
Oh.
Like they did with Mandalorian. So that number 1 is hitting September 13th. Bounty Hunters 38, September 20, along with Dark Droids D Squad number 1. That's a little side series. And then at the end of the month, Dr. Aphra 36 and Mandalorian number 4. Okay, quick comments on our last show. Hannah from Thrawn Addict says, really enjoyed the first 2 episodes. I know some people have complained some parts were a bit slow paced, but I think it's important to establish these characters for the audience who hasn't seen Rebels. I do wonder if these episodes have been confusing for people who haven't seen Rebels due to the history of Lothal, finding Ezra, and Thrawn's story, and that they don't have any of this background knowledge. I thought episodes were visually stunning, and the actors playing every character is doing a fantastic job so far. Live action Sabine is spot on for me, and I think Hera is quite different. But the more I see Mary Elizabeth Winstead play her, the more I like her portrayal. I do agree with Hannah about Ahsoka being different to what she is like from Clone Wars and Rebels, but I put it down to she has been through a lot and quite a bit of time has gone past. So maybe just her acting more mature and reserved as she has gotten older. Love the Balin character and happy he is not just an evil villain, and he is slightly conflicted and looking forward to learning more about him and his apprentice going forward. I really hope the Inquisitor is not Ezra because I don't understand how they can explain how he found a way back and Thrawn hasn't yet.
Oh.
They're spending a lot of time, right? Yeah, they're spending a lot of time trying to get to Thrawn, and if Ezra has been back and turned evil randomly, then in my opinion, defeats the purpose of a storyline and Ezra's sacrifice at the end of Rebels. But I do agree it shouldn't be some random person who is the Inquisitor. I just don't know who it could be. Anyway, loving Ahsoka so far and cannot wait to see more. May the Force be with you.
That is an excellent point about Ezra getting back and Thrawn not.
Very much so. Yes.
I'm off the Ezra boat. I'm fully on the Barris boat.
You jumped off for sure? Okay.
I've jumped off for sure. I'm on the Barris boat.
Back on the Barris boat. Okay. And then, of course, it goes on and says, great deep dive review. Thanks so much to you both. And then we got a comment from Amanda. She says, I was mostly waiting to see how Hannah felt about Sabine being trained by Ahsoka. I've been on the same wavelength there. The impression from the trailers really makes it feel like everyone must be Force sensitive because Star Wars, which is not what I want. But that scene with Hu Yang does go a long way to explain as she has some Force sensitivity. Understandable from Rebels' point of view, but she's poop at it. However, she is a Mandalorian trained in all kinds of weapons, so why not add lightsaber to her arsenal? I wish they would have went a bit deeper on the conflict with her and Ahsoka, though. I'm betting they will later, but the way they set it up in the first 2 episodes made it almost awkward feeling. Here's to hoping we get some more awesome episodes. So.
And that's an excellent point that it feels awkward, and I'm glad it feels awkward, but I agree with you. I hope that we do eventually find out what happened between them.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I agree. All right. That will do it for our episode here on Inside the Force, talking Ahsoka. We will be back next week to talk about episode 4 or part 4 and whatever news comes out. There just isn't a lot of news out there right now. So thankfully we have Ahsoka to talk about. Again, we hope, we support and look forward to the end of the strikes for the writers and the actors, and hopefully they can get back to work and making us some great content. But we do we support you guys out there getting that done. So, but yeah, we'll be right now all we got is Ahsoka, so we'll keep talking about that, and look forward to everybody coming back next week, and keep going to our YouTube channel. Look for some new episodes of Beyond the Saga, and me and Hannah were just talking about we got to get some more done of that, some council sessions, and me and Corey just talked about doing some, we're probably going to do some dark knowledge on Balin a little bit. So yeah, so we're going to talk about some of that stuff,
I'm hoping Ahsoka opens that door a little bit more into the dark side, or at least the perception that Balin has on the Force, because that would be very interesting.
That would be very interesting, sure. Yeah, because he's not Sith, obviously. So yeah, so it's interesting to be the dark Jedi kind of interesting take. It is definitely an interesting take. All right, thanks, Hannah.
Thank you, Dave.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. May the Force be with you.